we're here again to get together. I hope that this has been helping you during your course. It's actually, this is our fourth one. It's amazing to me. And I'm hoping that some of you have bought a tablet or a piece of paper and you've written down some of the things we've spoken in the previous couple of lessons about what's made you happy, what made you feel happy, what made you feel upset, what got you angry, what dreams we were having, and what were they about, and how did they make you feel when you woke up. All of these are, of course, of trying to get ourselves to where we want to be, living in freedom and not being in bondage to our emotions and our shame and everything else. And I felt really led today to talk about restoration, something that we don't even hear about. We can talk about restoring old cars or restoring furniture, but we never really hear about people restoring themselves. And it's not that we do it, but God can do it for us. And it's in the course of what we're trying to do right now, finding ourselves and healing, that through that healing process, God will restore things back to you that you've lost. You might say, well, what have I lost? Well, I don't know about yourselves, but I know in my life, I lost a lot of family. I've lost a lot of financial gain. I've had a lot of shame. My dreams that were shattered, so I really have not had a lot of dreams, because every time I think I can do something, then something would come and destroy the dream, especially in relationships, thinking I got married and things were going to go well and be and happy, and they never did. But did I stop? No. I should have, but I didn't. I mean, God let me do it 5 times, let me know, say, see, Terry, you should have stopped the first time or the second time. But there's what I say, our strong-headedness or our stubbornness, sometimes we don't get what he's trying to tell us. But we finally get it. It took me until I was 50 years old, but I finally got it. And he did restore back to me a lot of the things I lost. It may not have been in relationships, but he restored my emotions and took away my shame. And there was a lot of things God's given me back. You know, financial gain he gave me through a process that one day maybe we'll talk about that, but it was a miracle to me. But he did. He got me to the place where I'm at today. And even in that place where I am today, this has been born from that, because I have so much adversity and I have things I've learned along the road and over a long time, over many years. And restoration happened to be one that I remember driving in my car once, and I was listening to Christian radio, because that's what I usually listen to. And there was a pastor, and his name was Bob Phillips. And I was driving in my car, and he says, God will restore the years that the locusts have eaten. And I thought, and that's all I heard. It was at the very end of a tape, a half hour, or whatever he was talking, show program. And when I wrote down the words, God locust ate. I had never heard that in my entire life. And I got home and I looked it up, and it happened to be Joel 2:25, and it says, I will make up for the years the swarming locust has eaten. And the swarming locust in there is talking about the enemy. Years that you put in to achieve something, and all of a sudden it fell apart. And you had nothing left to show of your hard labor or your work or the time you put into it. And that's devastating. As well as emotionally, it just sets you back to a place that a lot of us say, why even try anymore? You know, it happens to us maybe once we can do it, like I was talking about the glass that shattered. But over a course of time, you just get calloused. You get to the point where you're not even going to step forth an effort to try to engage in anything, because you know the end result up to that point in your time didn't work, so why try? And that is spiritual bondage, and that is from the enemy. And that's like he was saying, I will restore the years. That's a real promise of God, and it's something that you can hold on to and have the hope that the work you're putting in, like you're doing right now, trying to achieve something in your life more than what you have, there is a great promise at the end of it. You know, and that's what this study is going to be about. We have a whole Bible to talk about. This God restoring things is throughout the Bible. But today I'm only going to use 2 examples. One's going to be Job, the book of Job in the Old Testament. It's a long book. It's probably got 44 chapters in it. It's a life of adversity of a man that loved God, and he did nothing wrong. Even in the Bible, it says he was a righteous man. But the enemy, Satan, approached God and said, let me inflict pain to Job. And I will guarantee you he won't be loving you and serving you like he does when you take things away from him. The only reason he's serving you is because you blessed him so much. It's a book in the Bible. When I first started reading the Bible back when I was in my early 20s, I actually put down the Bible for a while and didn't read it because I couldn't understand how God, there's supposed to be love and all these things, would allow so much pain and heartache to a man. It amazed me, and I had to put it down because it really put me back a while. And then over the course of a few weeks, I picked up the Bible because I read it from cover to cover. And I went back to Job and I started reading it. And for years, I thought, why did God allow that for him? And then one day, probably 20 years ago, or maybe 30 now, it was his integrity. God knew that if the enemy destroyed everything Job had, Job would still believe that God was a good God and that God would give back to him something for all of the heartache. And if he didn't, that was okay too. But he believed that in and of himself. And this is before anybody knew about reading the Bible. The Bible was never written. So this is something Job just had within himself, to trust in God because God had been so good to him prior. So he couldn't reconcile why things were going so bad when he believed God was good, and why was this happening? Well, it's a story in the Bible put in there primarily for that very reason. Why do bad things happen to good people? There's even a book written about that years ago. So I read you the one about what Satan said, and then in Job 1:6-22. No, I'm sorry. Job 42:10. And the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he prayed for his friends, and the Lord increased all that Job had twofold. So everything Job lost, he got double at the end. And in that verse that I just read, and also all these verses will be at the end of this video, so that you can write them down, or you can frame whatever you want to do with them. But the key word here is that the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he prayed for his friends. His friends, supposedly friends, were always telling him what a bad person he was and to confess his sin to God. And that's why all these bad things were happening to him. I mean, he was not on top of having the boils and all the things that was wrong with him. He had his closest friends telling him that he was a bad person and that he had done something wrong for God to be doing this to him. And he had done nothing wrong. So that fallacy that, well, if people that are having bad days or bad years or months, they're going through a lot of struggles, they don't believe in God or they've done something really bad, that's not true. I would probably say 70% of the time that probably is true. We've made wrong mistakes and things happen to us because of our choices. But there are instances in life that you could be doing everything right and something bad happens. Because that's the enemy trying to destroy everything going good for you and to get you off kilter and to get you angry and to get you into bondage. That's how he works. So you never know when you're going to get bombarded by the enemy. You just never know. When you think that you've got an area in your life that Satan is not going to get me in this area, let it be, let's say it's drinking. You've been drinking for years, you stop drinking, you've got a chip for 2 years, you know that you've got that battle taken care of, but you know what? Something happens and then you fall back. It's not to say that you can't come back out of it, because you do, but the enemy, when you think you're in an area that you can't be bombarded in, trust me, he can come in very subtly and make you fall back right into that. That's why it is so imperative that you read the Bible, learn for sure all of these things, and write down these things about yourself so that when you'll start being more aware. I call it discerning spirit. You'll start seeing, because you're going to have a pattern to look at, and you go, I see what's going here, I'm out of here. and you change your course or you get away from that person or whatever it is, because you know where that road's going to take you. So, but it's when he prayed for his friends. His friends were not his friends anymore. They were really against him, and they were making him feel worse than he could have done. But God waited until when Job started to pray for the very people that were discouraging him. God knew that he was humbled, and that he realized, just because I'm going through this, they don't understand it either. So he prayed that God would show them. I don't know what he prayed, but I'm going to say for myself, he prayed that God would show them that he did not do anything wrong, and that this was something far beyond anything that anybody ever knew about, because this was spiritual warfare at its utmost. I don't even know if spiritual warfare was talked about prior to that. I do not know, but I know it's the first story in the Bible that I was really aware of the enemy doing something to somebody. Warfare is really at the very beginning of the Bible with Cain and Abel. But that's beside the point here. I'm going to get off course. I got to keep my notes here. So anyway, that's about Job, and I'm showing how the restoration that God did. He went through a lot of pain and suffering, yes he did, but God did restore back to him everything, and he lived to be 140 years old. He saw 2 generations, not only his new children, but his children's grandchildren. So he was blessed again, and it was a lot of struggle and pain, but he did get there, and that's encouraging, I hope, to somebody out there that's listening, that you can regain some of the things you've lost. Some people have lost their children through their wrong actions. That there's some people that have disruptions with their mom and dads. Some people had with their family, with their brothers and sisters, they were estranged. There's so many ways that we could lose things in our life, and they're damaged. There's a lot of damage there, a lot of misconceptions. I think a lot of it, we take in something the wrong way, and we get angry and mad, so we just wipe them out of our life. That, in my case, that happened. It's irrevocable, some of the things that happen, but God takes away the pain or the yearning or whatever it is from you, so that you can go on with your life, because not everything's always perfect in families. That's a sad thing to say. It just isn't. Things happen, and people change, and just things happen. But you can't hate the person. You just walk away. Like, I remember a pastor, his name was Pat Robertson, actually. This is early on in my walk with God. And because I had a dad that was emotionally abusive, and he left when I was 11. But this scripture is the one scripture that helped me to be released from the damage and hurt my dad did to me over the years emotionally. And he said, when you know there's a dog on the other side of the door, how many times are you going to open that door and let the dog bite you? I'm a very visual person, so that really made sense to me. And I have been bitten by a dog before, so I'm scared of big dogs. So that particular thought pattern for me helped me to realize I don't have to keep putting myself in the position for my dad to hurt me, because now I was in my 20s. I was actually in my 30s, because my daughter was probably 2.5 years old, 3 years old, when a particular situation arose. And I walked out of there with my daughter, and I was in my car, and I cried all the way home. And I thought, I'm not going to let this happen to me. I don't deserve it, and I'm not going to do this anymore. Was it a hard decision? Yes, it was. But you know what? It was a very free decision. And over the years, oh my, I'm free. I was able to forgive my dad. I was in my own. I wrote him a letter. He never responded, but that doesn't matter. I forgave him. And that was where the bondage was with me. I had so much anger. I just had so much anger about him, and the pain and the sorrow that he caused me in my lifetime, that I got free. It took a while. It didn't happen just the day I said I was going to be free. But over the years, oh yeah, I got free. Because forgiveness, a lot of us, I'm talking about this as a joke, a lot of us think that forgiveness means that what they did to us is okay. No. And that was where the enemy kept me in bondage. Forgiveness is freeing you up to get them off the hook and let God heal you. As long as you're harboring all this anger and remembering all the things that were said to you or the things that were done to you, as long as you hold that into you and you let it play in that tape in your mind, you have a rut, you can never get healed. It's when you release them, when you release the person and what they've done to you, as hard as it might be, at that point in time, just like it says here in Job, God restored everything to him when he started praying for his friends. Because the hatred, the anger was gone. And only God can work when there's not, I call it static. You know, if you're wanting to be made whole and to be, you can't hold on to jealousies, anger, play in your mind the scenarios of things that people have done or things you've done to yourself. You have to let it go. And you have to, and only God can help you let that go. And it's so important to let it go because it's serving nobody any good. The people that hurt you, you think they think about what they said to you? Sometimes people don't even realize that they said something to hurt you. And you're holding in all this anger, and the poor other person doesn't even know why you're mad at it because you took it in the wrong way, or maybe they did. It's a string of events. But sometimes the people that hurt you, do you think they think about what they did to you? No, they're living their life, they're happy, and here you are stuck back to whenever they did that to you. You know, so where is their freedom in that? And every time you think about it, your emotions go back and you relive it. And what we need to do is learn how to release that emotional tie to them and the pain and give it to God and move on with our life and be aware of people that might try to hurt you like they did. Or when you see scenarios coming up that you know what, I can see where I can get. Yeah, be aware. That's the whole key of this, like in the Bible and with Paul. I think it's in Corinthians. I'm not sure, I didn't write this down. This is why I usually keep notes because I don't want to get off course. But it says in Corinthians, now I lost my train of thought. To be stand firm. Stand firm. Be aware of what's going on. And Peter, in first, he said, be of sober mind. Be aware. Don't just go through life nonchalantly thinking, oh, everybody's fine and nice. And listen to their words. Watch how they operate. See and watch so that you don't get pulled into a situation again that's going to cause you more heartache and pain. Because we are creatures of habit. We are drawn, just like myself. I was drawn to men that were emotionally unavailable to me because that's all I knew. My dad was never, and I'm not blaming my dad, but I'm just saying, as growing up as a little child, my dad was never emotionally bonded with me, ever. I never had any bond with my dad. And it was always like, if I do things right, then he'll love me. If I do this, he'll love me. And in my relationships, when they would fail, it was because they were emotionally unavailable. And it finally dawned on me, oh my gosh, this is the type of person I'm drawn to. Because we're always drawn to what's familiar or what's comfortable. And that's why it's so important to write these things down so you start to realize, boy, I am drawn to this, or I do this, so that you're aware of what you're doing. If nobody else is going to be aware, it's for you and your safety and for your ability to move on past it and not fall back into the trap again. And it takes a long time. It's work. Like I keep saying, this is not an overnight success story trying to heal yourself and let God work in your life. It takes time and it takes work. And a lot of the time you got to relive some of the pain you went through. That's how you get healed. Because God will put something in your mind that you didn't even remember. When maybe something happened to you when you were 7 years old. And you've got to remember, oh yeah. You know, and then you start to put the puzzle together. It's like our life is like a puzzle. And there's little pieces missing. And as we grow, hopefully, and we get older, the pieces start coming together so that we can make sense of why we operate and we can become whole. And as we become whole, then maybe our relationships will get better. And they will. Because you can't take two broken people and put them together and think it's going to work. It's not. Like me, I got married. It was always 4 years in between, but I was never healed. All I was doing is coming into one relationship thinking I was healed, and then more damage would happen because I wasn't healed from the first damage. You have to have two whole people get together in a friendship or whatever, and then you're a complement to each other and you help each other. If one falls, you're strong enough to hold them up. If they fall, if you fall, they're strong enough to hold. But if you're dependent upon each other and you're not healed, then anger is going to come in and get mad, and you start to replay the same scenario, kind of like that rut in your mind, because you always go to what you're used to. And that's what we need to change, because it's destructive, usually what we used to do and how we think. We want to get past that and get to the other side of it. Anyway, Peter's the next person I want to talk about for restoration. Peter was an apostle. He was so much like us. He was very spontaneous. He cussed. He was a rough man. He was a fisherman. And Jesus, when he was walking, he called Peter. Peter had a boat, and Jesus needed a boat. He goes, "Can I get in your boat?" In fact, he just got in Peter's boat. He said, "Push out in the water." Peter didn't know who Jesus was. But he just listened to him and he did it, So that's the type of person Peter was, just like us. He just kind of went with the flow, and if he didn't like something, he let it be known. But Jesus used Peter, unrefined and all, to be the man that was going to prepare and be the spokesman for the church when Jesus was crucified. After he died, he was going to be the one that Jesus used to build the church. And it was the man that he used. And over the course of the 3 years that Peter was with Jesus, Peter learned a lot. Did he make a lot of mistakes? Oh, yes, he did, just like we would have. If we were walking with Jesus and Jesus was saying certain things, we'd look at him and go, really? How are we going to feed 5,000 people with 2 loaves of bread, or 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish? That's impossible, But Jesus did it. And then Peter started, just like all the other apostles, they started to believe that Jesus could take 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish and feed. There were 5,000 men, because in the biblical days, women and children weren't counted in a group of anything. Only the men were. So you can figure there was probably 15,000 or more people that were there when he was feeding 5,000. And there was 12 loaves, 12 baskets full of leftovers. So do the math. Jesus is a miracle worker, and he can work in our lives just the same way. And when Peter was with them, walking all the years, the night before Jesus was crucified, the people came and they arrested Jesus. And Peter, Jesus told Peter in Luke 22, it's 31 through 34, Simon, Simon, which his name was Simon. 2. Peter had Cephas, Simon, and Peter. They're all the same person. But Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has demanded permission to sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you once do return back again, strengthen your brothers. And Peter said to him, Lord, with you I am ready to go both to prison and to death. And then in verse 34, he said, I tell you, Peter, the cock will crow today 3 times that you will deny me 3 times. This was right after when he was going to be crucified. Did God forget about Peter after that, at the encounter, of what he did? Jesus looked right at him when he denied him the 3rd time, and Peter saw him look at him. I mean, can you imagine how devastated Peter was after being with Christ for 3 years? Walking with him, seeing him raise the dead of Lazarus. He saw him raise a little girl. He saw all the things that he saw. And then here he denied him because he was scared. He was scared they were going to kill him too. But remember that he said that Peter was going to be the person that was going to start the church. And after so many days, it was 50 days after his resurrection, the day of Pentecost, Peter stood up in front of all the Roman guards and everybody, as bold could be. And he said, you crucified him. I'm here to testify he is alive and well. And 3,000 people joined the church that day. So he began to be the builder of the church. And not only was he a builder of the church, he actually became the shepherd of the church also. And in John 21:15 through 25, it's a long read. So I'm just going to give you the three instances I'm going to use for this illustration. The first time, on verse 15, Jesus said, "Do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes." He goes, "Tend my sheep." Then verse 16, he asked Peter again, "Do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes." And he said, "Shepherd my sheep." And the third time, Jesus said, "Do you love me?" And Peter was getting frustrated at this point in time because you know I do, and you know everything about me, Lord. And I'm sure he wanted to say, "Why do you keep asking me the same question?" And then Jesus' response was, "Tend my sheep." And the reason that I believe that Jesus asked him 3 times was to forgive him for each time he denied him. He asked him 3 times because he denied him 3 times. So I think that was the way Jesus was showing us that God forgives us no matter how many times we do something. He will forgive us if we repent and come to him and acknowledge the fact that we do fall short and we do have some issues in our life that we need to deal with. Some of it might be alcohol, some of it might be drugs, lies, our jealousy. Eating too much could be part of the problem. We comfort ourselves in different ways, and that is sin. We need to go to God and acknowledge, you know what, I'm out of control in this one particular area of my life. Acknowledge that, ask him to help you to get through it and to how you can overcome it, because then you're free. This is how you get free. You get so free. The darts that Satan throws at you makes you fall back. But if you come to God and ask him, say, you know what, I'm not there yet, Lord, but I want so hard to do what's right. And we might do well for 2 or 3 days, and then the third, fourth, or the fifth or sixth day, we fall short again. Did we forget what we did for the first, second day? No. We just have to stop, ask God to forgive us again, and move on. And forget what we thought. We have to forget and move on. We can't chalk it up, "Oh, I can't do it." Yes, you can. You can't live a life and do something for so many years, and then all of a sudden you all want to change overnight. It's not going to happen. You're going to fall right back into that pattern. As soon as something happens and you get mad or irritated, you start cussing or you start throwing things. If that's what you do, God forbid, I don't like that. We all do things, and God knows our temper. So we have to forgive. We have to ask for repent. We have to ask for forgiveness again. Every time you do it, you need to ask for forgiveness. And as you do, little by little, you're going to start realizing, boy, here I go again. And you're not going to want to do it. So you'll find yourself stopping in the middle of doing something before you even let it escalate to where it could have went. That's progress. And you should be happy with that progress. May not be perfect, but you're better than you were the day before or a week before. And if you celebrate your progress, little steps at a time, like slow and steady, you will be able to achieve what you're trying to achieve. But if you put the expectation, I'm going to get it done next week, it's not going to happen. And even Paul, we'll go into his story. You want to talk, he's another Job, but in a different way. He went through all types of adversity. But Paul wrote in prison, in the book of Philippians 3:13, he says, "Brethren, I do not regard myself as having laid hold of it yet." I mean, he knows he's not perfect yet, but he's working on it. And then he says, "But one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind me and stretching forward to what lies ahead." And that's the key. We have to forget what we did in our past, even if it was an hour ago, and stretch forward to move forward to where you want to go, and keep that vision in your mind. Because are you going to fall? You bet you are. Little children, when they start to walk, they might take 2 steps and they fall. But do they stop? You want to talk about persevering? Look at a little baby trying to learn how to walk. They'll fall 15,000 times and get up and start walking again. That's what we need to do. And as we've gotten older, it's harder and harder to get up and start again because we have so much baggage in the past of us. And that's how Satan keeps us in bondage. So anyway, that's how this is going to end on that note. And I hope that you can think about this and that the freedom on the road that you're on right now is going to be so wonderful when you attain it. you're gonna feel it in time, and you're gonna be so happy, and you're gonna feel very joyful about it, and you'll know that it's all worth everything you've done for it to get there, and you'll know that it didn't come easy. And I like to end off on something here, but I have this card, another card, and this one really has a lot to say because I bought this for my ex-husband years and years ago. He was an ex-drug addict, and no one had much thoughts about him. They just thought he was a loser. But for some reason in me, I didn't think he was. Our relationship didn't end well, but he was a good person, as much as he could be. The truth of the master, the touch of the master's hand, and it's a picture of a violin. Many a man in life out of tune, and battered and scarred with sin, is auctioned cheap to the thoughtless crowd, much like the old violin. But the master comes, and the foolish crowd never can quite understand the worth of a soul and the change that it's brought by the touch of the master's hand. The violin in this is us, and the master hand is Christ. And what this is on the back of it, there's a long saying here to read, is that the violin was ugly, it was beat up, and had like little marks on it. So nobody really wanted to buy the violin because they thought it was worthless. But a master violinist bought it, and when he played it, it was beautiful. And that's kind of how we are. We might be tattered, and we might be scarred, and we might be beat up, but in God's hands, we can be made beautiful. On that note, I'm going to leave. God bless you, and I look forward to our meeting again.